Basically what I wanted to do is to just give you an overview of how we in Bracknell have set up our SAB. Being a unitary authority, I'm different from the other three speakers. We have our own way of doing things, especially because we're obviously a planning authority as well, which gives us lots of benefits. Also disbenefits in terms of if I disagree with the planners, we've got one chief officer above us and he makes a decision. So that's basically what I wanted to sort of go through. So by way of introduction, I just want to tell you we're a unitary authority, part of the former Berkshire County Council. There are 6 of us in the Berkshire. About 28 miles west of London, population of 110,000. Our area is a mix of forest, hence the name Bracknell Forest, part of the original Windsor Forest. Quite a lot of farming area around us, and we've got most of our populated areas are in 3 main towns, and we've got 3 rural parishes. The whole council area is dominated by a new town, one of the original London new towns, which was established in 1949. And overall, we don't have many flooding issues in our borough because most of the drainage has been constructed over the last 60 years using attenuated surface water systems. We've got thousands of ponds over the borough and lots of big pipes and so on. The only thing I would say is that none of those pipes allow for climate change, which obviously is quite a worry going forward, so we might well end up with flooding in the future. Our internal organisation sort of has led to the way that we've set up our SAB. Basically, we've got a single directorate within our organisation which covers planning, highways, environmental health, highway maintenance and so on. And we've got 3 chief officers under our director. So our planning and transport comes under one area, which is where I work. And it also includes building control and land charges, which I'll explain about as to why that's relevant for our SAB. We also have basically all the regulatory services and maintenance comes under another officer, and it also includes emergency planning, which again is another key thing as to why we do things our way. And then finally we have a leisure and countryside services, which covers all of our open space, our ranger service, and so on. So in terms of our sort of decision making as to how our SAB is going to be set up within our authority, when the Flood and Water Management Act first came out, we were quite fortunate. The EA actually had quite a few staff, and the county set up a technical officers group. So we had a representative from each unitary, and we actually had a seconded officer from the EA who helped us set up our authorities as lead local flood authorities. And that was quite instrumental in getting us, taking us forward in producing our local flood risk management strategy, for example. And in terms of setting up our lead local flood authority and the SAB, the way that the council looked at it was they looked at flood risk management and thought, emergency planning, flooding, so they put that under the environmental services, basically because obviously they deal with land drainage, they deal with highway drainage and so on, and say emergency planning. So all our flood risk management comes under one chief officer. And what we did then was to put the SuDS and the SAB role under the planning and transport. But we took it a stage further. Because we actually are a unitary, we have building control within our authority. And so what we've done is split our SAB role between building control and highway adoption. So all of our unadopted SuDS will be dealt with by building control, and all the adopted SuDS will be dealt with by highways, which is where I work. Once we'd actually made that decision, we were going to set up our SAB. We went on a nice Syria training course, met the wonderful Bob Bray, and we all had quite an epiphany about SuDS, and that actually it wasn't a terrible thing. So I can remember about 10 years ago, we had a young graduate planning policy officer who wanted to put SuDS into a big housing development, and none of us knew what it was. He'd obviously learned about it at college. And as highway engineers, we all said, no, we can't do that. Definitely can't have SuDS. We're certainly not having private water draining onto the highway. You can forget that. And then, as I say, back in 2010, having met Bob and been on the course, I had that eureka moment, and now we actually accept anything in our SuDS. It's quite amazing. Since about 2012, our Environment Agency has pulled back from giving us any comments to our planners virtually, and basically anything under 5 hectares they don't comment on planning applications. It's all standing advice, or they give a pro forma to developers to fill in. And so we actually now, or I fill that role of giving advice to the planners. In order to actually try and ensure that our planners and so on were aware of SuDS and the coming in of the Act, because obviously it was going to come in April 2012. So the previous year I set up a great big seminar in our authority. We had, I think I had about 80 odd people come along from all over the authority. I had planners, environmental health, I had engineers, education department, leisure department and so on. Anyone I could think of who would be involved in SuDS came to that seminar. And I remember the director came in to give a keynote speech, and he looked at me and he said, "Is there anyone left in the office?" It was, and I said, "Well, these are all the people who are going to be affected by SuDS. You know, it's a big subject." So we had that seminar, and I invited Bob to come along and give one of his wonderful talks, and he showed people all the pictures of SuDS that he'd done around the country. And going away from that, I think a lot of people suddenly realised it was something which we could do within the authority. It's taken a while to actually get it up and running. What led from that was that I've now become involved a lot more in planning. I actually go along to master planning meetings, I go to pre-application discussions and so on, and I give comments basically on behalf of the EA. We also work directly with the EA when they're actually commenting on those developments where they do actually give comments, then we actually liaise together to give that information to our planners. The only things that I've come across in terms of particularly master planning and so on is that most of our planning policies and the master plans refer to the use of SuDS, but they do tend to be rather imprecise. Our planners, for example, tend to use words like developers should consider the use of SuDS, or SuDS might be used to deliver multifunctional use of space. There's never any solidarity behind the wording. It's quite airy-fairy, unfortunately, which means that when the developer comes in and we say, where's the SuDS? We say, oh, it's the pond in the corner there. It means it's quite unenforceable, and it's very hard to actually get things changed and altered. Obviously, the NPPF itself refers to the use of SuDS. The Environment Agency, when they do comment, they refer to the use of SuDS. But I do find that whilst the policy team have actually sort of got a grip on that, the trying to get the development control officers to actually take that into account when they're looking at the development is a lot harder, because they have so many other things to weigh up and to balance that actually the drainage is something which tends to get left. So I think that overall one of the biggest challenges is actually get the planning DC people to actually take more account of the wider policies and issues with regard to SuDS. They're very aware of their own policies, but when it comes to, for example, our local flood risk management strategy, I doubt if any of them have read it. Yet we've got a nice big section in there on SuDS and what you should be doing. One of the things I do keep telling them, though, is that they are a risk management authority under the Flood and Water Management Act, that we have got a local flood risk management strategy, and therefore that strategy they've got to take cognizance of. And also that the Water Framework Directive affects everyone in the council, which is something else which is difficult to get across to them. I think I've jumped a bit there. We are. Interaction with developers I find is quite tricky. Most of the developers I've come across seem to think that drainage is something which you deal with by condition after you've done the layout. Basically, you get your planning permission. Once that's done, you give a layout to a consultant, and then the poor engineer has to fit the drainage in. At pre-application discussions, obviously, we try to preempt that, refer to the use of SuDS, refer to the MPPF, talk about our council policies and so on. Offer them free time. We don't charge for pre-app. So I actually try to say to them, look, discuss with me, come and see me, send me drawings, I'll comment for free, come and see me. Doesn't always work. And I think the biggest problem I get is that for outline applications in particular, they tend to come in with an indicative layout. Now that indicative layout won't have any drainage on it, or it might say pond here, here and here. And also in their drainage strategy, it's got all the right words. They've copied and pasted out of the SuDS manual. There's little tables in there of all the SuDS facilities they're going to use, and they can incorporate into the site. But then obviously when you comment on it and say, well, where's the actual design? How's the SuDS going to work? They say, it's only indicative. You know, it's an outline application. We haven't designed it yet. And then, of course, what happens is that the application comes in, the reserve matters, and lo and behold, the same indicative layout turns up. And then you say, well, where's the drainage? Where's the SuDS going to fit in? Well, actually, there isn't any room for it. Or, we got a pond. I mean, that's SuDS, isn't it? Or, well, we actually haven't finalised the design yet. Can we deal with it later? And obviously, in terms with SuDS, it's just too late. You do need to get in there very, very early to get the SuDS in there to work. And also, even with full application, I get exactly the same problem. Trying to get the developer to engage and talk about SuDS early on is very difficult. The number of times I get a layout where if you overlay a landscape layout on top of a drainage layout, you can see that they're done by different consultants in different offices, and they've never talked to each other. You get play areas in the middle of a pond, or you get a pond on the side of a slope, which is a sort of 1 in 4, that sort of thing. They just obviously haven't thought about the drainage at all. And trying to get that across to developers is hard work. I think the bigger developers know about SuDS, and their consultants certainly do, but they tend to be rather risk averse, and they're not willing to actually put their toe in the water and to come up with something innovative or too tricky to do, because if it can't be done in micro drainage, it obviously isn't going to work. And the smaller developers, they're just not geared up for it, I find. So I think there's a lot of education to go on in the future. I know that DCLG and HBF and so on say that the SABs aren't ready for SuDS. Well, actually I think it's the developers who aren't ready for SuDS. I think we actually are quite a long way down the road. So going forward, basically been working on procedures for dealing with applications now for the last 6 to 9 months. I've been working with our software supplier, same as Gordon. Our supplier is iDocs, who do the uniform system, and I've gone through them and we've come up with a workable draft module now for SuDS, which they're working on and bringing up together. All of our applications in the future are going to go through our planning administration, because obviously being a unitary, that helps us. So everything is going to go through planning, whether it's a standalone application or a combined application, because they're already geared up to receive money, to look at plans and so on, and to put them onto a system. I've put 16 staff so far through Syria SuDS training courses. We've actually got the trainers to come to us, and we've run those courses in-house to try and get things geared up. And I also have done quite a few lunchtime planning training sessions, because planners like CPD, and so I often go along, and especially when we get new planners come in, then I've been talking to them about SuDS and how it's going to work. We also need to gear up for some of the other departments in the council, because a lot of them will be affected by SuDS, particularly our education and property services. They know about SuDS, because I keep telling them, but they just don't think about it. They don't see it as being anything which affects them. But as soon as they send in a school or any application in the future when the SAB is in place, I can see that they are going to get a bit of a shock, that they've actually had to think about the drainage up front. And I've got a care home being built at the moment, a 65-bed care home, and they're nearly up to roof level and they still haven't got a drainage outfall because property services didn't think about it. So that's the sort of thing where there's a lot of education needed in-house. Our highway and landscape maintenance is actually going out to tender at the moment, and so therefore the actual maintenance of SuDS in the future is going to have to be incorporated in that. But again, being a unitary, we are fortunate in that we already maintain an awful lot of open space, so we are used to actually doing all of that sort of maintenance. Our traffic management section obviously need to be aware of SuDS, because in the future we're going to have to be designating an awful lot more highway as streets with special engineering difficulty, and also our local land charges team when it comes to doing designation. So there's quite a lot going forward in terms of planning and training that we're going to have to do. Like some of the other authorities, we have got interim policies for adopting SuDS, and our basic policy is that we will adopt anything which is in the public realm. So we will adopt SuDS under the highway, under section 38, and basically we've copied Gordon's spreadsheet on how to do work out sums, and we've also nicked the one from Cambridge, so because obviously we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We've also been around Oxford a few times and seen their systems. So we do adopt some SuDS under the highway, and also an open space with commuted sums. Now, the way we've done it is that we already take commuted sums for maintenance for open space, and obviously under section 38 the highway is maintained at the public expense. So what we do is we work out the cost of maintaining a road ordinarily if it had gullies and so on. Then we work out the cost of maintaining it with SuDS, and we deduct one from the other. And so we ask for the extra over to try and actually make it cheaper for the developer and make them want to use SuDS rather than a conventional system. And same with the open space. We take open space with a sum of money, which is then given to the leisure department to maintain. And again, we work out the cost of maintenance for that, and then we work out whether the SuDS will be an extra overcost, and that's all we ask for. And then we ask for the commuted sum for that. We have had trouble though. I mean, only this week we've got a developer who keeps asking me how much is it going to cost. And I keep telling him, well, it's outlined. Have you designed it yet? Well, no. So I said, well, I can't give you a price. And so trying to actually get down to a figure to put in a 106 is proving problematic. I like the idea of actually having a schedule or something, so maybe I need to go around and talk to Cambridge, and we'll borrow their schedule or something. We'll try and get that in the 106. But developers want to know up front what the cost is, and that is proving rather difficult to get into the 106. So that is something which we do need to look at. And also looking outside of our authority, we've actually set up a Berkshire-wide SAB group. So the other authorities we've got together, and we're already discussing the use of joint training and so on for developers, for consultants and so on. So rather than all 6 of us doing it 6 times over, we'll do it once and share the cost. So that's the sort of thing we're looking at for doing in the future. And so that's where we are at the moment. Thank you.